Whenever you want to find a new looking glass to examine your own life with a fresh effort, Maxwell Conroe's books never let you down. Some of his stories appear to be nothing short of self-help instructions, disguised as elegant prose. Craftily written with exceptional clarity, Maxwell's stories are visceral. Conroe writes experimental fiction in stories full of provocative ideas that create magic sensations, which you will want to read over and over again. His stories are liberating, cleansing, revealing, gripping, and thought-provoking. Let me read for you a story by Maxwell Conroe that I myself find particularly endearing. Titled Garden Secret, this story is about Isaac, a writer, who lives alone in his secluded homestead, surrounded by a seemingly innocent garden, which the writer often dreamily stares into from his writing den. Yet he is unaware that his garden actually harbors a dark secret. Here is how this story goes. Garden Secret, written by Maxwell Conroe. Isaac had opened the awning window in the side wall of his writing den and was enjoying the full view of his garden from his writer's desk, which was strategically placed in front of his den's bow window. This morning was a particularly spectacular one. It had just stopped raining, and now the low spring sun had appeared again. One by one, the droplets evaporated from the leaves of the thickets in the garden laid out in front of Isaac's writing room. Damp air was sucked into his room via the awning window, the moist smell of nature marvelously mingling with the aroma of freshly brewed coffee rising from a mug on Isaac's desk. With all his physical needs so splendidly fulfilled, Isaac's mind was beginning to mill over his recent concerns. Certain matters were still largely unbeknown to Isaac. However, emerging from obscurity were some murky glimpses that would soon start to affect his serene life in a profound way. And the seemingly innocent garden he dreamily was staring into, it actually harbored a dark secret, long lost. Part 1. Some background. Living alone in his secluded homestead, surrounded by the natural cocoon of his garden, Isaac cared little for socials, and generally thrived living the secluded life he had chosen to live. Every spring, the plants and flowers in his garden would reinvigorate Isaac's sensation that he lived in near perfect harmony with his surroundings. He was looking back at a very productive life, having enjoyed considerable success as a novelist, but his breakthrough as a writer had been a very slow one indeed. First, Isaac wrote short stories for literary magazines, which paid him symbolic sums, merely asserting in the transaction their copyright over his works. Isaac had held his job as a high school teacher for over a decade, until he had volunteered for homework tutorial classes. An affair had developed with one of his pupils. At age 16, she was legally still a minor, but she knew more about passion and how to physically express it than Isaac, in spite of him being nearly twice her age. Unfortunately, the girl's younger brother had been spying on them and had posted nasty messages on social media, which had quickly led to Isaac's dismissal. For Isaac, the release from his job had been a blessing in disguise. He decided to fully focus on his writing ambition. He wrote Steamy Was Her Name, a book about his passionate affair with the girl at school. Of course, Steamy was not her name, but it protected both her identity and made for a fittingly suggestive title. The book was controversial, and maybe not even greatly written, but with all the fuzz in the media, Steamy sales had swelled to record numbers. The royalties made Isaac a small fortune. Isaac's school had been in Kingston, where he rented an apartment west of the Hudson River. However, after the Steamy affair, he had quickly relocated to a quiet villa, purchased from his Steamy royalties, near Rhinebeck. This little town was located east of the Hudson River in Dutchess County, New York State, not far from a getaway resort, catering under the name Delphi Institute for Holistic Studies. Isaac had found his destiny. There was a sort of countryside artiness in the region. Rhinebeck and Dutchy County were populated mostly by people who could afford taking time out to think about the essence of life, and who were trying to surround themselves with serenity and beautiful things. Part 2. Unexpected Affair. Isaac had now lived his tranquil life for nearly 2 decades. Steamy had first appeared over 25 years ago, and was still reprinted at regular intervals. None of Isaac's later novels would rival this early success. From time to time, he would give lectures on writing at the Delphi Institute. It would boost the sales of his books, but not in large numbers. And apart from getting his weekly groceries from the cauliflower Whole Foods market, Isaac would rarely leave the comfort and serenity of his little writer's studio at the back of his house with the beautiful view of his garden. Recently, something had distracted him. He had fallen in love with one of his course attendees at the Delphi Institute. These were adults, so the threat of a renewed episode of emotional turmoil with a minor, as in Steamy, was not what bothered him. What had surprised Isaac is how unexpected was the revelation of his feelings. What made matters also slightly more complicated was that the person he liked so much was a bit gender fluid about herself. Although mostly dressing as a woman, Isaac knew Toby was physically born as a man. In the past few weeks, everything had happened so fast. A fitting label for his present predicament was a stormy affair, and in nothing compared to the steamy affair. Part 3. A Discovery. What happened between Toby and Isaac had an uncanny resemblance to what Oscar Wilde wrote about in Dorian Gray. The painter of Dorian's portrait was very much in love with his subject, but a friend of the painter toyed with Dorian's feelings and led him astray. So it happened with Toby. One of Isaac's other pupils took a great fancy to Toby and left no stone unturned to find a way to steal her away from Isaac's clutches. The intruder's name was Helen. She also turned out to have a connection to the house where Isaac lived, little did he know. But when Helen's jealousy took the better of her, she had no qualms to declare to anyone who would listen that the writer's garden harnessed a dark secret. The detailed nature of the dark secret was not revealed by Helen, but when she spoke of it, there was little doubt. Her anxiety and discomfort beamed from her face when she mentioned the words, dark secret. Of course, Toby also was informed about the existence of a dark side to Isaac's lovely garden. Her interest was piqued by it. Raising Toby's interest for the dark secret had not been Helen's intention. Rather, she had hoped it would deter Toby to continue her regular visits to Isaac. Toby simply continued to visit Isaac, but did never raise her concern because she did not want the dark secret rumor would bereave Isaac from the enchantment with his lovely garden. But at the same time, Toby left no opportunity unused to snoop around, all by herself, in Isaac's garden, looking for possible clues about the alleged dark secret. After having surreptitiously scrutinized, over a period of several weeks, every inch of Isaac's garden, Toby could not find a single clue as to what it could be, that dark secret alluded to by Helen. The latter remained tight-lipped about the nature of her knowledge, even though both ladies would meet regularly. "Go and see the former gardener of the house," was Helen's hint to Toby. "His name is Wilson." It was not hard to locate Mr. Wilson. He lived in an old farm plot just outside Rhinebeck, but it was very hard to get him to avail time for a meeting. Toby's calls went unanswered, but when she briefly spied on his house, a passing neighbor assured her that Wilson was still alive. He was occasionally seen trimming the hedge around his property, but this was not the season for such maintenance, and Toby decided to simply leave a note in Wilson's mailbox, next to the gate of his property. Toby had thought a long time about how to get Wilson's attention. This is what she had written. "Dear Mr. Wilson, a dear friend of mine has shared with me the secrets about the garden at Elmsdale Road 5. I have an important reason to talk to you about this matter. Would you be so kind to meet me at a for you convenient time and place? Yours faithfully, Toby Greaves." Several weeks went by, but then Toby finally received the letter she knew could only be from Wilson. It was as brief as her own note to him. "Dear Mrs. Greaves, I'm sorry for taking time to respond, but unfortunately, I see no reason to meddle in old affairs buried long ago. Yours truly, Wilbur Wilson. Having read the letter multiple times, Toby realized Wilson was right. Why uproot an old matter interred long ago? She confronted Helen, asking why she was so bent on discrediting Isaac, whereupon Helen admitted her only motive was jealousy for having to share Toby with Isaac. Toby was very pleased by the depth of Helen's passion and adulation. At the same time, she did not want any harm be done to Isaac. The best, she decided, was to give Helen what she wanted: sole proprietorship of Toby's charming person. The hard part was to find a gentle way to tell Isaac she would stop seeing him. Part 4. A Farewell. How to say farewell to someone you truly love so much you're prepared to rescind your feelings for the sake of your lover's well-being. Is that something you may decide on your own, without discussing the reasons with your lover? These were the thoughts that kept milling in Toby's head. But the real reason, the dark secret in Isaac's garden, unbeknown to him, she did not want to trouble him with. His whole world consisted of the house and its little garden at Elmsdale Road 5. In the end, Toby decided not to settle for either Helen's or Isaac's advances. She just needed to move on with life, somewhere else, out of harm's way. Both Isaac and Helen received a brief letter on the same day. Dears, I have had a wonderful time with you and treasure what we shared, but lately I have been burdened by sorrow and inner struggles. I now have embarked on a long trip abroad. Please do not try to find me. You will be better off without me. Love, yours affectionately, Toby.